into the Cris Collinsworth podcast featuring Richard Sherman and presented by our good friends at DraftKings and the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Also want to remind you before we get started here that all draft content is now available at PFF.com, from draft grades to deep dives on draft classes, even analysis of the 2022 draft class, all too soon. There are also new PFF projections for win totals, which have changed since the draft. Head over to PFF right now and check it all out. All right. Well, today we are unfortunately not going to have Richard Sherman on the show because we had to do this a little bit earlier than normal. So Richard was unable to make it, but we have an amazing guy on. Ron Rivera, who's the head coach of the Washington football team, is going to join us. And you're going to hear some incredible stories about his first year with the Washington football team. I just want you to imagine what it would be like to go through this year. Of course, in his first year, Washington had to overcome some controversies, starting with the Washington football team name. They could no longer be called the Redskins, and justifiably so. There were charges against the organization of sexual harassment that they were coming to him about, that he wasn't even there. There were issues with the COVID issues that had come up, the social justice issues. And all the while, as head coach of this team, he had to do that while battling cancer and battling his own treatments. There were times that he had to tap out of those treatments despite being one of the toughest guys to ever play in the National Football League. An amazing story, an amazing guy, the first person of Puerto Rican descent to ever win a Super Bowl. And here he is, head coach Ron Rivera. All right, joining us today is probably the most normal human being that I deal with in the National Football League. Maybe because, like me, he got his brains kicked in a little bit playing the game. But for the most part, Ron, you just seem to be one of those guys that is just normal. And there aren't many normal head coaches in the NFL. There aren't many guys that you go, okay, there's not a little quirk there or whatever. But I think probably what you went through a season ago had to be the most astounding coaching job I think I've ever seen in my life. Not only do you guys win the division coming over from, a different team, but you did it with all of that stuff going on in the background. You had to go through chemotherapy. You had to do the whole thing. Can you now look back on that season with some perspective and go, oh my God, how did I ever get through that?
Chris, I have a few times, especially lately. And quite honestly, I didn't realize, what it was that I was doing. I think a lot of it was because I just didn't know any better. I did what I normally do. When I first got here, there were a lot of things that we talked about trying to change, the culture being one of them. We went through that. Then we had the whole social injustice. We had the George Floyd murder. We had all these things that happened, the name change. And then when I found out I had cancer, to be honest with you, the only things that really mattered at that point, other than my family, was getting my treatment and coaching. Because getting my treatment was probably the main focus, but coaching was what we made part of my recovery, part of my therapy. Because when I was going through it, one of the things that happened when we sat down with the doctors, we talked about what it was going to be like, what I was going to have to go through, what I was going to have to endure. And then that going back to work and working was trying to make things as normal as possible. And though that's what we did. Stephanie and I, my daughter Courtney, who was one of my caregivers, we didn't Google anything. Other than Googling our doctors, we didn't Google what the therapy was going to be, what the medicine was, what the treatments were, what the side effects were going to be. We just listened to what the doctors told us. We talked to the doctors, we found out what the plan was, we got second opinions on the plan. And the amazing thing was everybody we talked to said, oh, the plan is exactly what I would do. That's the right plan. That's what I would have told you to do. And one of the doctors, we even asked one of the doctors, if this was your brother, what would you do? And they said the same thing. So that's what we did. We listened to them. We didn't Google anything to find out. And so as we started the process, one of the questions that we had asked too was, well, should I work? Can I work? Oh, absolutely. You should. And so in my mindset, that was part of just being normal. And so I tried to do that every day. I missed 3 days of practices just because of it really wore me down. But making every game, that was part of the goal, because that was normal. And I tried to make it as normal as possible.
But you got stunned a little bit. So you're a tough guy, right? You wouldn't be Super Bowl champ and the whole thing if you weren't a tough guy playing your position. But the first time you went in for that proton therapy and they start going at it, that's a different deal, wasn't it?
It was. The first day I went in, I got chemo and proton therapy all in the same day. And it was my very first time. And what happened was I started that morning, we got up at 6, had a normal breakfast, went in and started the chemo. And that's an all day event. And then on top of that, being in the hospital, getting that whole treatment, then getting my radiation, my proton therapy was overwhelming. And so when I first got done that day, I had a little reaction to everything, which really kind of got my attention. And the first week, in all honesty, you feel like, oh, it's not that bad, but then all of a sudden the cumulative effect starts to wear on you. You start to feel, the whole thing of getting radiation 5 days a week, going through a cycle of chemo and then getting ready for the second cycle. When I really got it was a week after my second cycle. We went in, I got my radiation, my proton therapy. I met with my oncologist that day, and then I was going back to the facility, to Washington Football Park, and Stephanie went to park, and we were going to go down to the training room, and I was going to get I was going to get hydration. And I looked at her and said, Stephanie, I can't get out of the car. You're going to have to take me around. So she drove me around to the backside, and she went and got the head trainer, Ryan Vermillion. And arm in arm, Stephanie and Ryan literally carried me into the facility. And it just so happened to be a Tuesday, the players' day off, but most of the guys were in getting treatment or working out. Now, a lot of those guys saw me come in, and it was really at my lowest point during my treatments. And I went in, I got hydration, and there was no way I could stay. So she took me home. Courtney, my daughter, had to come out, help me get into the house and into bed. And from about 10:30 till about 5:30, I slept straight through. I was so wore down. I missed lunch. I missed my afternoon snack that I typically have. So I was really wore down. I wasn't going to get up. So she called our doctor, our team doctor, Tony Casolaro, and he got on me. You've got to push yourself through. You've got to make it through. You've got to get up and eat. And so I started to get up, and then Stephanie got on me about eating. I went downstairs, and Courtney was there. She was trying to urge me through it. She was really upset. And even my dog got in on the act. He came over and he was nudging me, and and so I forced myself to eat, and I made it through that day. I woke up the next morning and realized just how important it was to keep pushing. But that was my low point. That really was.
We've all had so many humbling experiences in our careers, in our lives, as parents, whatever, as husbands. We've all gone through some stuff. But so you start there. That was kind of training camp, right? I mean, that was sort of early in the year, and you're trying to put this football team together and figure out, who's best at what and what are you going to do. And how hard was it to just coach? You know what I mean? To just think, because there were times that you probably couldn't be all in on the practices and watching. And I know that Jack Del Rio who, went through it with John Fox as well, played a big role for you too last season.
Yes, Jack was excellent, as were the coordinators. The other two did a great job for us. Both Scotty and Nate were terrific with the offense and the special teams. But Jack, having been through it and understanding it, and so on a moment's notice, Jack was ready to step in and lead a meeting or get practice started. Because there was a couple of weeks when I wasn't strong enough, healthy enough to get out of the cart. There's a company called Club Card, and they had actually made a cart for me and sent it. So I would go down to practice in it, and I couldn't get up. Or if I did, I couldn't stay up for very long. I'd have to go sit back down. So, I did what I hoped I never would have to do ever as a coach, and that was coach from a cart, but I did a couple of times. But what's really cool was not only did, Jack and Scotty and Nate step up, but our leadership did. In a way, I think, when I couldn't do things, when I couldn't function, not just the coaches, but the players were pushing each other. One of my pet peeves, or one of the things that I try to push is tempo. Practice with tempo. Make sure it's an up tempo. It's speed. You got to get used to playing fast. And so I coach that way. That's one of the things I always talk about when I'm blowing whistles. Is hey, let's go tempo. Let's go hustle in, hustle out. Let's go tempo. Play fast. Well, when I couldn't get out of the cart and do that, my guys were doing that. Brandon Scherf, Terry McLaurin, Chase Young, John Bostic. Those guys were now urging each other to practice and play with tempo. And that, I think, was one of the residual effects that happened with this team, was that when they saw me not be able to do it, the guys that were in leadership roles, they stepped up and did it. And that's something that stuck with me as I kind of went through this. I was watching who were the leaders, who were the guys that were helping to push each other.
It was so interesting to watch your team last year, right? I mean, so the NFC East was one of those divisions last year. It was like who was going to win it? Everybody was below 500, but you guys were, in my opinion, a different below 500, because you were building something really for the first time, and you were going through what you went through. You were going through, like everybody was going through, what was the social justice issues in the National Football League, which I think unless you were inside a football team or even inside the NFL a little bit, you didn't understand quite how much that rocked the world of all of these young people that were involved. Can you describe, as you were trying to put this thing together, the significance of what was going on in this country and how it impacted your team?
Yeah, first of all, the COVID really kind of changed their approach. But what was really cool about that was they understood very quickly, because they did a great job. We only had two players test positive throughout the season. I think they understood the importance of taking care of themselves, because it wasn't just them that was affected, it was their team. But then when the social issues came up, and we talked about the George Floyd murder, there was a lot of questioning going on. We had a team meeting. I made some statements. I talked to them, but then it was just me and the players. And when it was just me and the players, no coaches, no support, just us, they opened up with each other. And we had white players talking about, God, we didn't realize, this has really made us understand. Some of our white players, non-black players, it really struck a chord with them. And it was amazing to say, God, we didn't realize, I didn't see this. And when you heard some of their teammates, the black players, talk about what they think about every day, what some of them that are fathers, to young men, what they're worrying about, what they see for the future. It really, I think, helped our guys. It was an awakening that reflected what was happening within our world, because it was an awakening. A lot of people were being woke up. Their eyes were opening to something that we didn't realize existed as a country. And I think that was very good. It was almost, at times, it was almost cleansing. Not completely, but it was enough to get people's attention.
You were a first, right? I think you were the first person of Puerto Rican descent that ever won a Super Bowl with the 85 Bears. How relatable was that for you? I mean, you had to overcome things, not just the cancer, not just being the head coach and having, been let go in Carolina and all the different things, but you had a story to tell.
Yes, I do. And it is different because, I'm not Black, and I could never tell what it was like for them. But I grew up in a military family, and my mom's family comes from the Salinas Valley. And it's a migrant farm working area. And my grandfather, my grandmother, my aunts and uncles worked on the farms, and I can remember going to the farms and having having breakfast at my aunt's house on the farm because her husband was the chief mechanic for all the farm implements that are used. So I saw it. And so I go to college, and some of my teammates are from the valleys, whether it's the Salinas Valley or the San Joaquin Valley, and their families ran the farms. So there was a little bit of vibe there for me that I dealt with, and I had my situations and my run-ins, and because I was really the only Hispanic kid on the football team at one point or another, and so I understood that to a degree. I mean, it's not the same, but it's similar, and so I could empathize for what was going on. I didn't quite understand it. I have my youngest brother's wife is Black, and so I see that as well. So there were some things that were similar, and there were some things that I'll never know or never understand that they have to deal with.
You're such an interesting guy. I love talking about what was last season. But when you guys, I remember I asked you the question, and what would it mean to you to win that division? And this was, we did a game, I can't remember who you were playing. It was late in the year though. And you guys were kind of like, nobody really was paying too much attention. And all of a sudden you had a chance, right? You had a chance to win that division. And I think for the first time, it kind of dawned on you, all that went into last year, all that season was about, and for your family, for your team, for the country, for all the different things, and for the Washington football team, this team that had to change its name, right, because of some issues that were going on, what it would mean. And it kind of struck you a little bit, and it was special, wasn't it? It was special beyond winning a division.
It was, because it to me, what it really encapsulated was just the fact from where we came from what we had to deal with, what our struggles were, how our guys had to fight, how we as an organization are trying to get past our past, because everybody, there were a lot of people that kept pulling us backwards and kept trying to reference what happened 10, 15 years ago, and what I was trying to do was I was trying to get our guys, we were trying to go forward. We were trying to establish something new. I talk about trying to develop a sustainable winning culture, and change the culture that was here before us. And as we started to do that, people started to see it. Our guys got past oh, here we go again. I mean, early in the year when we lost a few games, I got that sense, oh, here we go again. But then there were a couple of games that we really fought and played well, and our guys thought, oh, that's winnable. And that, I think, was one of the things that also kind of prompted my quarterback changes that I made, because our guys were seeing that we can be better. We can win. And I think that was part of, wanting to make the move that I did, because I just felt I got to do everything I can to give these guys a chance to show that, hey, we can be a good football team. We can be a good organization. And that, I think, Chris, more than anything else, was what I saw winning was doing for us. It was helping to change who we had been into who we can become.
Yeah, it was amazing to see Alex Smith, and as incredible as your story is, and that when Aaron Donald jumped on his back, I was watching the game. I literally, I never had that feeling ever, because we all know what he had gone through and almost lost his leg and all the different surgeries and all the time. And to have the best defensive player in the game right now literally jump on his back for his first contact after coming back from all of that surgery. I mean, my body just cringed. I cannot imagine what his family, what his wife, what his children must have felt like, what you must have felt like having put him out there in that game.
Oh, yeah. Believe me. My heart was literally in my throat. And I did look up to the stands to his family. And I could see they were jumping up and down, and I could see that his wife was holding her breath. But when he got up and went back in the huddle like nothing happened, I thought, oh, he's got it. He's got this. And you could see it because, Chris, there was the article that's come out recently, the one that was in that was in GQ. And so when the season was over, I reached out to Alex, and we went and had breakfast and sat down and we talked about a lot of things. And I told him, I said, I'll be honest with you, Alex, I didn't know what to expect. And so I didn't understand. And a lot of the things that, because I know one of his things that bothered him is that early on, we put him on PUP. I put him on PUP to have him work out with the trainers so we could see, so we could make sure. I know that others had told him, hey, you can make it through this. But I had to know because I didn't know anything about it. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what had been done. All I know was he was wearing this brace. All I know is that, he had this horrific injury, complicated by the infection and then the surgeries, but I had to watch it. And when our training staff, our strength and conditioning staff told me, Coach, he's gone through everything we threw at him and he's handled it, then it was time to activate him. And as he progressed and got better and better and healthier and stronger, I in the back of my mind, I hesitated putting him back in because I didn't want to be the guy that put him in and he got hurt again. You know what I'm saying? That scared me. That really did. That concerned me. But I also knew that he had gone through what he went through to get back to where he is, that he earned this opportunity and he wanted it. So we went with it.
Yeah. Such an interesting year. We saw Tyler Heineke. We saw so many different people. Dwayne Haskins, you let go. A lot of people thought this year might be a year that, despite the fact that you signed Ryan Fitzpatrick, that you might have made a move in the draft and, come up and taken one of those 5 quarterbacks that everybody was talking about. Mm-hmm. Did you consider that at all?
Oh, yes. Oh, we did. We did, Chris. We really did. But the thing also that stuck out in our mind is the amount of draft capital, the price that we were going to have to pay to try and get the right one, the one we liked the most. That was hard because we're looking at our team saying, God, we need a linebacker, we need a left tackle, we for the future, we need so many other things that just getting the one guy might not have put us in that position. Now with what we've done, we secured some of our positions. We feel good about some of the positions. And the rest of the team. And I'll say this was one of the things that we talked about too, was other than Tom Brady, who's won multiple? Well, you can say Peyton, you can say Eli, but then who else? You look at the other guys that have won them, there are a lot of one-timers. And what do those one-timers have in common? Well, they're guys that were very efficient. They managed the game. They didn't turn it over a lot, and they made plays when they had to. So we're just wondering is that the other formula? If you're fortunate enough to find this guy, you ride him. But if you don't, and you find these guys, what says you can't win with them? Other than Tom Brady, think about this. So we went through that back and forth. Now, I'm not saying that if the right guy in our mind is there, that we don't ride with him. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, we know at least Ryan can wear some nice Hawaiian shirts, and I've worked with him a couple of times on different things. There may not be a bigger character in the game, and a guy who loves it. I mean, when you watch Ryan Fitzpatrick play the game, I mean, it's like somebody just told him this is the last snap he ever gets to play. When he runs like a wild man. He'll make throws. He'll take chances. He'll make you crazy sometimes, but then he'll make a play like he did against the Raiders in that game to win the football game. Your early impressions of what you have at quarterback right now with Ryan?
Is a personality, exactly what you said. But the thing that's interesting is when you talk to the guys that coached him and then you talk to the guys that played with him, they all say the same thing. What a great guy. He's a great locker room guy. Man, he's awesome with the young guys. He teaches, he helps, he shows guys how things need to be done. And then on top of that, he competes. So again, that's what I think we're getting. We're getting a guy that's going to help us continue to develop as a football team. I mean, we by no means are where we want to be, but we also have a pretty good core. We started with a good base. Now to me, it's about putting the rest of it together. And a guy like that can help us.
Well, I tell you, one thing we do know is that on the defensive side of the ball, you guys are loaded for bear right now. I think top 2, top 4 team, depending on which statistic is your favorite for evaluating defense a season ago. Chase Young, Montez Sweat, so many of the really good young players that you have. And you add, I'm going to screw up his name again. I already asked you what it was. Jammin. I hope it's Jammin. That's like the perfect name for a linebacker. It's probably not. But Davis out of Kentucky, and I've never seen a linebacker that runs 4.37 or whatever he runs. You play the position. You tell me, what does he add to an already really good defense?
Well, what James is going to bring to us is you're going to have a very athletic guy, a guy that can play stacked linebacker inside the box, but at the same time has the ability to go be, I guess they call it an overhang or a guy that walks out and plays in space. He's got that kind of ability. He's shown his coverage skills, which are solid. He plays with great vision. He's physical in terms of run stopper. He goes downhill. He's learning to play what we call a hat and hands technique. He's got good hand placement for the most part. We just think this is a good all-around guy that can be a 3 or should be a 3-down player for you. He should play every down. He's a guy that's going to add to what we're building and be, I think, an integral part. And with those guys in front of him, he's going to be able to run. And that, I think, is one of the really exciting things, that he's going to be able to go sideline to sideline and make plays for us.
Yeah, 2 big defensive tackles in front of him for sure. And the other thing that I see in the game today is that everybody wants to go those tight formations with their receivers and run those sort of deep over routes. Does that linebacker position now have to sort of have the ability to turn back and make some plays in that space?
Yes. Because of what's happening, in my opinion, the way the offensive styles are evolving, your guys have to be athletic. And that's why I think the position is so hard to find. The days of the first and second down linebackers are few and far between unless you're playing a team like Tennessee that's a big physical downhill team. So you're going to have to make sure your guys are adaptable, they're capable of running in coverage. And at the same time, they've got to be physical enough to withstand a team that does try to pound the ball on you.
You've got, I was sort of laughing as we were watching the draft and preparing for it and all. Of course, we have our list of needs that, we feel like your team had and all that. And it was like linebacker, tackle, cornerback, wide receiver. Your draft went linebacker, tackle, cornerback, wide receiver. It was like right down the list. But one guy that I really liked was actually a 3rd-round pick of yours, a wide receiver out of North Carolina, Diami Brown, who I had in the 1st round. Every time, I watched so much tape on him. My initial impulse was this guy belongs with the top 3 players, and nobody was, they had all separated and then Kadarius Toney was sort of that next guy, and everybody understood it. But if there's going to be a breakout player on your football team this year, just know this. If I'm predicting this first, this guy might be the guy.
He has some traits that you really do love. Absolutely. He's got tremendous speed, good quickness off the line of scrimmage. He makes people miss. And then he has the ability to stack a corner real quickly so the corner can't recover and get back on top of him. And he has that separation speed. One of the things that we talked about this earlier was that, PFF had this stat about him in terms of contested catches, and it's really high in his favor. And that's one of the things that really stood out when you watched him in traffic, getting hit, in a group of people, he seems to come up with the ball.
Yeah, the other two guys I wanted to ask you about was Chase Young and Terry McLaurin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Terry was, I think, a third-round pick, wasn't he? I mean, he wasn't a high pick, and Chase Young was sort of top of the board, sort of a thing. But Chase Young probably last season, I've never seen a young kid that was sort of accepted as the leader of a defensive football team, especially a really good defense like what you guys had. Can you explain Chase Young to me?
He does things the way you're supposed to. He does things the way a leader does. When he practices, he tries to be first at everything. When he's in the workouts, he's trying to be first with the workouts. Then when we're in the game, he's constantly going with energy on the field. He comes to the sideline, they go through the corrections, and then as soon as they're done, he's back over by the coaches cheering on the offense. He's cheering on the special teams. And when somebody makes a play, he's one of the first guys to greet him. It doesn't matter whether there's a defensive guy, an offensive guy, or special teams. He's always doing those things. And so when one of your better players does those types of things, it doesn't matter who they are, everybody starts to react. He's got an infectious personality too. It's very positive. Doesn't matter what the score is. He believes we have a chance. And that also gets down to his teammates.
You and Dan Snyder, and I know Dan Snyder too. Not that I haven't had a couple of battles with Dan over the years. He gets mad, like all these owners get mad at me every once in a while. But you guys always step up. I think it was the Rich Eisen fund this past weekend that you guys felt pretty strongly about. Just tell me a little bit about Dan, who probably is one of the hardest guys or maybe misunderstood guys in the league right now, and exactly what you guys were doing with Rich.
Well, I do agree with you. I do think Mr. Snyder is misunderstood. But, this past, I think it was February, Stephanie and I had gone over to the Snyders to visit and really kind of recap the year. We talked about the team, what had just happened, where we were headed, what the things that we wanted to do as far as, developing our team and preparation for free agency and the draft. And while we were having a conversation, one of the things that came up was, my recovery. We had gone through what we'd gone through, and then Stephanie and I were planning on giving back, and we were trying to find a cancer charity, and we wanted to donate $100,000, and Mr. Snyder just looked at us and said, well, Tanya and I would like to make a contribution. We'd like to double that. And we were, wow. And literally he got up, went over, and gave us a blank check and said, here, do with it what you guys think is best. And Stephanie said, well, look, we're researching. We want to find what we feel is a real worthy cancer charity. And when we saw the advertisements for the Run Rich Run, Stephanie did her homework on St. Jude and found that St. Jude also has for the children with cancer what's called the Red Frog Proton Therapy Center. And proton therapy is one of the therapies that I use during my treatments and got to understand just how good it is and how important it is, especially for children to use it, because proton therapy, unlike photon, is very direct, very specific. It's not a broad beam, so there's not a lot of collateral damage done to the healthy organs and tissues in that area. And so we wanted to make that contribution. We reached out to Rich Eisen, talked to Rich about it, told Rich what our plan was, and he loved it. So Stephanie, she let the Snyders know what we were planning. We put together this video, and what it was I was going to accept the challenge. But then I turned and said, look, I'm still going through my recovery. So my family member, Tahoe, our dog, is going to run the 40. So he ran a 3:39.
Yes.
We made a check presentation. We presented our check and said, and also on behalf of Dan and Tanya Snyder, our owners, they want to double it. They also want to contribute $100,000. So we were able to raise $200,000 for the Run Rich Run St. Jude's project for the St. Jude's Children's Hospital. And again, it's something that we feel very strong about because it helps. It helps children and their families.
I've been to that hospital. It is phenomenal. It is amazing. They even have a TV studio in there where the kids actually are talking to other kids throughout the hospital. It's a phenomenal place. It really is. Ron, you are the best, my man. I really appreciate the time. Congratulations on another highly graded draft. I know those grades don't mean anything to you, but everybody around here thought you guys did a great job. So thanks so much. Glad you're feeling better and can't wait to see you this year.
Thanks, Chris. I look forward to it as well.
All right, a special thanks to head coach Ron Rivera for joining us today. Just a great guy. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and throw us a little love, if you will, on that review. We'll be back next week with another great guest, and who knows, maybe even Richard will have a free agent decision by then. We can talk about his new team. But until then, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.